I guess how did the Dream Junkies form? Because I know, you've talked in the past about the breaks and everything like that. So I guess like, from the breaks into forming the Dream Junkies, like how did that all like collectively like come about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you jumped ahead a decade, so I'll backtrack you a little bit. So in my creative journey, for whatever reason, man, I've always kind of had this like creative codependency of sorts, where I just wanted, like, I don't know why, but like I never felt adequate to just do stuff by myself. And it was funny because whenever I did stuff by myself, it would always work. Like it always worked. Like even in high school, like I could put a record out. So before I get into Dream Junkies, like before the Dream Junkies, man, there was the Renegades, then the Titans, then Rapture Records, Rapsure Records. Then there was Thoughts Aloud, which was me and my buddy Omar. Then Believe came around, Thoughts Aloud, as just a guy who was kind of hanging out. He was cutting our hair. He was just chilling. Like he had just moved from Baltimore. He was working at a Men's Warehouse, and he started DJing. And so that was like, okay, dope. Like you can DJ. We need a DJ. And Thoughts Aloud was supposed to be like the roots. Like we were trying to be a band, right? So it was me and my buddy Omar, and Belief was the DJ. We got Mike B on the drums, and then we'd have other musicians that would rotate from keys to bass. So then that evolved. Omar, we stopped doing music with Omar for whatever reason, and then we're like, all right, we need a fresh start. Boom. Now we're gonna be the Breaks. THEBREAS.
Also, these are all different groups. Like these are the multiple.
Kind of, but they all kind of evolved one into another.
Wow.
Some of them were totally different, but Thoughts Aloud to the Breaks was this. Me and Belief were the same. Me, Belief, and Mike were a part of all those two, right? Me, Belief, and Mike B. So we go from Thoughts Aloud. Omar was also around for Rapture Records, and he was also around for, I want to say, Rapture Records. He was around for Rapture Records, and before Rapture, it was like Renegades and Titans and whatever. So me and Omar would do Rapture, then Rapture becomes the Breaks, and the Breaks becomes Thoughts Aloud. No, sorry, Rapture becomes Thoughts Aloud, then Thoughts Aloud becomes the Breaks. Yeah. Omar bounces, and it's just me, Belief, and Mike B as the Breaks. And again, we have musicians. We couldn't really figure out how to do the band thing to travel, because now as the Breaks, now we're actually booking shows. Like we booked our first show at a college in Massachusetts called Smith College. In Massachusetts, it was an all-girls school, which is really funny. And so like we booked a show, and our first show at a college, and I think we had one show out of state before this, and it was called the Mixed Masters Lounge. It was a Christian show, like a Christian television show, and then we did our first show at Smith College. And so we do this show, and it paid us like $2,500, which is a lot of money in 2008. So we get paid $2,500, but now we got to coordinate how to get a drum set there, right? Because you can't fly across the country with a drum set. So we got to get like the buddy that goes to a different Colgate University in upstate New York to drive across to bring us a drum set, right? So like logistically, this stuff just became harder and harder because we can't travel with a drum set. And so anyway, the Breaks then goes from being like this band idea to really just me and Belief, because Mike B had a baby and was married, and we couldn't really justify like this man leaving and all this sort of stuff. So then the Breaks is just me and Belief. We decided that we didn't really want to do the Breaks anymore because we both wanted to do solo stuff. And all along, I'm knowing I'm supposed to do solo stuff. This is when Belief did, what's that record? Theo's Gift. So this is 2012 now. And so around that same time, I'm starting to do solo stuff, and I'm booking my own like solo college shows, not probably about the same rate that like me and Belief were doing as the Breaks. We had a good year of 2011, 2012. We had a great run, just as kind of like a duo slash, I'm the MC, he's the DJ, and then he's starting to rap. So long story short, man, I'm doing solo stuff, and then we meet Belief's brother-in-law, John Gibbs. Yeah. And so John, he's young at this point, man. John's maybe 18, 19 years old. And we basically, I started King's Dream as a way to like kind of help them put out music. I was really passionate about John. And we did a survey. We did a song together. We did something together with all three of us. And we kind of put a thing out. It was just like, yo, who do you got? We did a survey because I was really listening to like Michael Hyatt a lot of the time. And he's like, survey your audience, figure out what they want. And we did a survey, and we said, which King's Dream artist do you like the most?
Yeah.
Belief, John, Ruslan, or all three of us equally. And the survey overwhelmingly said all three of us equally. And then the other rankings was equally across as well, meaning like if there was just people liked all of us. And so we're like, all right, well, if this is what they like, let's do a project. And that's when we did the NREM edition, really just as a means to an end. And so at this point, I'm already knowing that like I probably should just be focusing on myself, but you get a talent like John Gibbs around you and you're like, yo, let me do what I can to leverage my audience, because I'm, flying around doing shows, doing colleges, maybe doing churches a little bit at that time too. Let me leverage my audience. And so the Dream Junkies kind of organically formed as like a means to an end as a follow-up to the breaks. And so that's 2013. We did the NREM edition. And we all did solo projects, and we're like, all right, we're gonna kind of come together every couple years, do an album as a collective, and then go back and do our solo stuff, right? So it was an album I think in 2013, and then the Good Religion album came out in 2016.
Right.
And so that's kind of like the backstory of how the Dream Junkies came together. It was never really meant to be like a rap group.
Yeah, because that's what
anything. Yeah, but hey, whenever you do anything as a collective, people kind of just want more of that. And so we're like, well, this is what the people want, instead of saying like, well, what do we want? Who do we want to be? How do we want to make music? And so I also think for groups and collectives, there's something to different voices and distinct voices on one song, meaning that if you are listening to an artist, you're going to develop really quickly of like, okay, I like this artist, I don't like this artist. But if you're listening to a group, you may not like all three members of the group, but you're like one of the three members of the group. And so then it like kind of like drives replay value. I also think there's a psychological thing, which is different voices. Like every verse, a different voice comes on. I think it makes the music and the songs more interesting, right? It's like if I'm doing a live stream by myself looking into a camera versus if I'm doing a podcast with one other person versus if I'm doing a podcast with 4 other people, right? It just creates more interest and it's more dynamic in that regard. And so yeah, man, that's how the Dream Junkies came to be. It was almost on accident. I remember we were sitting at the Yellow Deli and John had already had the name, so he came up with the name. It was like, I think we should be Dream Junkies. And we're like, nah, like that's whack. Like it sounds like we're addicts. And then we revisited that conversation after that survey, and we're like, all right, forget it. Like let's just not overthink it. Let's just do it. You know. And so yeah, man, that's the backstory of the Dream Junkies.
Okay, then because you brought up something that I had a question saved for later, but I guess I'll jump to that question. And that is, generally like whenever collectives come together, it's ideally with the purpose of it's not gonna be together, you know what I mean? It's not like a group. The whole point is that like you guys are leveraging your audiences so you can kind of like platform it to the next level. And then once everybody gets what they want, everybody just splits off and moves on. So I guess like, was that pretty much the reason like the Dream Junkies ended after the Good Religion run? Because it seemed like, especially when I was covering it back, it seemed like the Good Religion album, it was kind of like, it elevated you guys, and then it's kind of like, it pushed you guys into a whole new like atmosphere. And then I guess people were wanting to know like, what's the next move, you know what I mean? Like, what'd you say, like, I guess like to basically like get back or ground my question is like, was that ultimately like why like the Dream Junkies like finished? Like even though like you guys had great successes with on the Good Religion album, once you guys got there, you guys accomplished what you did, and then you guys just like split off.
Yeah, I mean that would be the accurate condensed version of it, in the sense that like this is right when Belief in Fatherhood's taken off. This is right around, because remember, 4 Seasons comes out in August, and then Good Religion comes out in March. So those 2 projects were right next to each other. Those 2 projects were 6 months apart, and so I think there was that, like how close everything was, and so that comes out. So Good Religion comes out, and then I put out Americana in September or October. So those, like, there was a lot of music back to back pretty fast.
Okay.
And I think we wanted to kind of all do our own thing. Belief saw the vision with YouTube, which is ironically enough what I ended up pivoting to.
Yeah, that's fun.
And I think we also just